What if the one thing we spend our whole lives trying to hide, our vulnerability, is actually our biggest superpower? In this explainer, we're going to dive into this really powerful idea. It's something that started out as research, but it ended up sparking this huge global conversation about how we live and how we love. It's a journey that shows us how our deepest fears might just be the road to our greatest joys. Okay, let's kick things off with this amazing thought from a researcher named Brené Brown. See, she started her career looking for cold, hard data, but she quickly realized that the most powerful data, the stuff that really matters, comes from our stories. And that's really the jumping off point for everything we're talking about today. So, meet Brené Brown. She calls herself a researcher storyteller. And her whole mission at first was to take all the messy, complicated parts of being human, things like connection, and just make them neat. She wanted to sort it all out and put it in a tidy little box. So this was her mindset, right? On one side, you have the hardcore researcher who thinks if I can't measure it, it's not real. And on the other, you have the human being whose personal mantra is basically, life's a mess, let's organize it. She was just so determined to break down human connection and figure out the formula for it. But here's where things got really interesting. Every time she asked people about connection, what she got back were stories about disconnection. She'd ask about love, and people would tell her about heartbreak. She'd ask about belonging, and they'd tell her these painful stories of being left out. The data was sending her in the complete opposite direction of what she expected. So after about 6 weeks of this, she just hit a wall. There was this unnamed thing, this powerful force that seemed to explain all the disconnection. She had no idea what to call it, but she knew it was the thing that unraveled, well, everything. And that unnamed thing? It was shame. Now, it's really important to get this. Shame is not the same as guilt. Guilt is about what you did. Shame is about who you are. It's this deep, gut-level fear that if people really, truly saw us, we wouldn't be worthy of love or belonging. And shame has these key characteristics, right? First, it's universal. The only people who don't feel it literally lack the ability to feel human empathy. Second, nobody wants to talk about it. And this is the kicker. The less you talk about it, the more control it has over you. And at the absolute core of shame is this feeling she calls excruciating vulnerability. It's that raw, terrifying feeling of being completely exposed. So, this discovery completely changed her path. She spent the next few years digging through thousands of stories, and she started to see this clear pattern emerge. There was one group of people who were constantly struggling for a sense of worth, and another group who just lived with it. And when she boiled it all down, there was only one single thing that separated these two groups. It wasn't money, it wasn't status, it wasn't anything you might expect. It was something much, much simpler. The people who had a strong sense of love and belonging just believed they were worthy of love and belonging. That's it. That was the only difference. They operated from a place of worthiness, and she gave them a name, the wholehearted. So what did these wholehearted people have in common? Turns out it was 3 things. First, they had the courage to be imperfect. And get this, the word courage originally comes from the Latin word cor, which means heart. It meant to tell your story with your whole heart. Second, they had compassion, but they started by being kind to themselves. And third, they had connection, which came as a natural result of being authentic. And this was the final, critical piece of the puzzle. The wholehearted fully embraced vulnerability. It wasn't that they liked it, who does? But they knew deep down that it was absolutely necessary. They just understood that being willing to be imperfect, to be seen, was exactly what made them so beautiful. Okay, so what in the world does this mean for the rest of us? Well, all this research forced Brené to look in the mirror and face her own huge battle of vulnerability. It actually led to what she jokingly calls a breakdown, which her therapist later called a spiritual awakening. And it's a struggle that most of us can probably relate to. So how do most of us deal with feeling vulnerable? Well, our go-to strategy is usually to numb it. When we feel that fear or shame or disappointment creeping in, our instinct is to just shut it down, right? Grab a beer, eat some chocolate, scroll on our phones for an hour. But there is a massive flaw in that plan. Because here's the catch, and it's a big one. You can't pick and choose which emotions to numb. When you numb the hard stuff, the grief, the shame, the fear, you automatically numb everything else. You numb joy, you numb gratitude, you numb happiness. And that, of course, just leaves you feeling empty and disconnected, which makes you feel even more vulnerable. And boom, the cycle just starts all over again. And, it's not just numbing. We have other tricks up our sleeves, right? We try to make anything uncertain, certain. We turn religion and politics into black and white issues with no gray area. We try to be perfect, and even scarier, we try to make our kids perfect, thinking if we just check all the right boxes, we can avoid pain. And finally, we pretend that what we do doesn't affect other people. Okay, so if all that stuff, the numbing, the perfecting, the pretending, if it doesn't work, what are we supposed to do? Well, the research points us toward a totally different path. It's a much more courageous way to live, and it's built on the very thing we're all trying to run away from. So here's the playbook from the wholehearted. First, we have to let ourselves be truly seen, flaws and all. We have to love with our whole hearts, even when we know there are no guarantees it'll work out. And in those moments of absolute terror, like when you're looking at your kids and you're just overwhelmed with how much you love them, instead of catastrophizing, we need to practice gratitude and just feel the joy. And maybe the most important one, to believe deep down that we are enough, right now, as is. Because here's the bottom line. When you operate from a place of believing I am enough, everything changes. You stop screaming to be heard and you actually start to listen. You become so much kinder and gentler, not just to the people around you, but to yourself too. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought to chew on. What if we have this all backwards? What if being vulnerable isn't a sign of weakness at all? What if it's actually the clearest, most accurate way we have to measure our own courage?